Alright folks, play number 2 here out of series number 1. As you can see, his opponent here stays in the same exact offense. He actually calls the exact same play. Osiris does stay in the same defensive front. He changes his coverage. So in this case here, we're seeing the 4 verts still. The only difference is now he's not motioning his tight end across. He's keeping him here, and he's running a post route with him. And then he gets a go route here. Oh, the one other difference, runs a hitch here instead of keeping him in the block. So he puts his 5 on Osiris's 5 essentially. Osiris is running a cover 2 out of this. Now, so it means he has 2 deep, 5 under. Every guy, as you can see there, has an under coverage here. And he gets a Tampa out of the defensive end here. This defensive end is going to drop off into this deeper hook zone here. He actually, it's almost like turning it into a cover 3. That's what Tampa essentially is. The middle linebacker, or in this case defensive end, gains more depth and kind of goes into almost a cover 3 look. Now, I will say right off the bat, this is not a good play to call against the play that his opponent calls. And the reason being is he has so many vertical threats here that it makes it extremely difficult for 2 guys to cover 4. It is he's spreading the field. It's a horizontal stretch in this case. He's going deep, so he's going deep vertically, but he is stretching the field horizontally and against 2 guys. So these 2 guys have a really tough job in this case, unless these corners were to stick with their receivers, the respective receivers here, because they have no threat. But being the video game that this is, they normally don't do that, and we'll go ahead and watch and see what happens. So as you can see right there, now his safety here, that was the other thing I forgot to mention. It's a cover 2. People like to disguise, they bring their guys in a bit and this and that. In this case, to me, this is just a little too far. Unless this guy's name is Troy Polamalu or Darren Woodson, I would never do this. Just for the simple fact is it is very difficult for him to be able to get out here to help out with that fade route in case that comes. And he needs to be able to be out there to do that because it is a cover 2. You know, he and he are your only lines of defense deep in this case. So you really need to let those guys stay in position, maybe move him up a little bit, but I would keep him at least outside the tight end area. So I think that also hurts him a little bit in this case. And as you'll see right there, he ends up, either way, he's in a quandary, as you can see, because he had the deep route here, deep route here. He has to make the decision. He makes the decision to stay there instead of hitting the middle of the field, or, you know, splitting the difference between the 2. And Ryan there throws it deep, hits it, touchdown. So it's just one of those things where his opponent called a great play against what Osiris was running, and you know, it's one of those things that just happens in football too. He made a great guess on his pass play against Osiris's guess on defense in this case. The one thing I will also say, like I said, I don't like his alignment right here as far as this safety. I would at least have him, even if you're going to keep him up, then at least have him outside the tight end here, so he has a little less room to cover. He has a little less ground to cover, I should say. You know, outside of that, again, like I mentioned in the first play, I would go into a nickel set, you know, some sort of extra DB set, because it is a nickel offense essentially, where you have 3 receivers in this case. That, you know, like I said before, it's also due to preference. He's fine with this. I'm sure he uses this a lot, so that's not the bad thing. The only thing I would worry about, okay, 2 plays in a row we saw go routes, so cover 2 is not a good play if you're playing against a guy who runs the go routes all the time, you know, all the 4 verts, I should say. You know, you're just really spreading your guys thin in this case. 2-man is a great play to call. Maybe 2 sync might help out a little bit, but once you get to a certain depth, you know, you're gonna lose it. But really, I would go like 2, cover 3, or even a 0 of some sort. You know, if you trust your guys to be able to cover the whole way. Outside of that, you know, grade in this case, he gets a 0 for play success. He gets a 1 for playing his responsibility, because he does. See there, he's going with that deep route to help out. It's just that the safety that he's not controlling stays too tight, and he puts himself in a bad position to be able to help out on that deep route. So he gets the play discipline in this case. He played his discipline. He did his job right. But he also gets a big play against him, so that's a -1. Plus, there's the touchdown, so that's another -1. So this play in general, overall, is a -1. And in the series now, because it's a 2-play series, so that's 4 possible points, he actually has a -1, so that makes it a -25% for the series, unfortunately. Now he does have those 2 bonus points, which will, obviously in the end of the entire thing will come into play. So if you were to add them right now, that would make it a +1. So right now he would be playing at 25% would be his grade for the first 2 plays of the ball game, at least overall. So in this case, that's what happens, obviously. And you think about it, when you have a 2-play drive and you give up a touchdown in 2 plays, -25% sounds about right. If I did this, I would have a -25, the same way. Just how it happens, guys. And we'll see what happens next.